Hello, everybody. I am Laina Orlando, and welcome to episode, I'm going to get the number right today, 191 of Ascension with A Course in Miracles. And it is April the 2nd. And I'm going to just ask for your forgiveness ahead of time because this past week I had a bit of a cold and then turned into more of a chesty thing. And I've just been using the energies that are taking place to align with the truth of who I am. So there'll be a little coughing. So that's what I'm apologizing for. There'll be a little coughing. And it's my first day like back into action. I can't remember the last time that I've spent 5 days doing nothing. I just had no energy. But at the same time, I was sitting recognizing that we're going through a big shift. And one of the clearest things that came to me through this process is that if we are not aware of the shift that is taking place, consciously aware as a human, we are aware of what is happening at a soul level. And this is something that is part of this journey of becoming, of waking up, is realizing that you have a spirit side and you have a human side. Now, forever, for thousands upon thousands of tens of thousands of years, humanity has operated as I'm only a human and spirit is out here somewhere. And spirit out here, God out there. When I die, then I can return to being spirit. But if I'm bad, I'm going to be in trouble, or whatever the stories are that have been made up to explain to us the separation of human and spirit. What is happening right now, and this has taken thousands of years of preparation, because changing our mind requires a lot of effort, a lot of time. It requires a lot of trust. This is, again, one of the reasons why in A Course in Miracles, there is a process of developing trust. They explain to us exactly how we cultivate trust in God. And even though lots of people who read this, who understand this, who say they know this, still don't trust God because we focus on the human stuff, and the human is what is real. And there's nothing wrong with that. But what is happening, has been happening, like I said, for thousands of years. Buddha, what, 2,600 years ago, began to teach us how to understand the mind, that we're not our mind, began to break things down in such a way that it was giving us an understanding of the power of the mind. We had lots of other people, Confucius, we had Lao Tzu, we've had so many who have been attempting, they leave the clues, they give us the information, and then we've either have to accept it and do something with it, or we can reject it. Either way, it's okay. And the reason it's okay is because the spirit part of us, which is the greater part of us, understands what's going on, knows all of it, because it lives in the eternal now. And to it, all of our human experiences are, it's like they're fractals. They're lifetimes that appear to be happening simultaneously. However, they're all happening in the now. I'll give you a visual. When my grandson, I was at the toy store with him, and I saw this slinky. Those of you who remember the old-fashioned slinkies, I looked at that and I went, "Oh my gosh, that's the best way to explain time, kind of." But it to our spirit side, everything appears at once. To our human side, everything appears as if it's different lifetimes. And we've had so many different lifetimes. But if you notice this, it's a spiral. You cannot not have it all be together. When you bring it back to its rightful place, to its where it's at rest, this is now. Now is all of it and the individual aspect of it. So we've got to wrap our heads around that and understand that total complete dichotomy. How can I have had all these multiple lifetimes and yet it's all happening now? Well, for that, you've got to go study quantum physics. I'm not your girl for that. But one thing that it is clear is that when we begin to understand the truth of who we are, we cannot help but begin to see why things are happening the way that they're happening. So we had all those sages who were teaching us information. Then we had Jesus came 2000 years ago. And Jesus, I would say, was probably the first and probably one of very few beings, now probably in the number that maybe 1,000, maybe a few thousand, who knew he was a human body, incarnated because he was incarnating as a body, but acknowledged that spirit, I'll do it this way, that he and spirit were one and the same. When the human and the spirit are accepted as being one and the same, this forms the Christ. This is the Christ. Christ consciousness is I am conscious, I am aware that my human beingness is powered by my spirit self. Now, there is nothing outside of me with any power. All power is within me. So we've been calling this God. Well, what Jesus was saying, I and the Father, God, are one. He became the Christ, Jesus the Christ, Yeshua the Christ, because he acknowledged that communion. That communion is what allows us to then be enlightened. That is because you bring all the light of spirit and you accept it. So now it flows through you. The Christ consciousness, the knowingness that we are the Christ, then informs everything that we do. It becomes who we are, and there's no doubting that. There is only the knowing that, and then not my human will, but thy will, spirit's will be done. And it doesn't mean I now step aside and do nothing and spirit comes in. No, what it means is I become the eyes and the ears and the feeling, and I see what's happening with all of humanity. But because I've embraced spirit, now spirit informs me, and spirit being God. And once you understand what God is, you understand God is love. God is the substance that has created everything. So all of us have that substance within us. The source of the energy of love is now inside of us. So Jesus said, I and the Father are one. And that's why it was so easy for him in his latter years after he had his awakening, which happened the moment that he had his full blown awakening that moved into enlightenment, was when he was baptized in the river Jordan by John the Baptist, who at that time was more conscious. He was further along in his journey than Jesus was, until Jesus had that experience of that merger with him and God. That's why he was known then as Jesus the Christ. John the Baptist did everything that he needed to do and taught all the things that he needed to do, but he was not the Christ. There's nothing that says John Baptist the Christ, because he had not fully merged with God, with Source. Jesus did. That was Jesus's role. John the Baptist played a very important role in assisting him in getting to where he had that experience. And John the Baptist didn't create that experience. That experience was created through Jesus, because Jesus had been doing the preparation to accept the truth of who he is. All of that, every bit of it, all 33 years before that, or 30 years before that, because he had his experience with John the Baptist around 30. Those previous 30 years, he was being a human, still hearing things from the Jewish tradition. God was out there, and those things not making sense. So he went off, the human part went off and did all the studies. And little by little by little, the more he learned, the more he was able to bring Source closer and closer to him, meaning the more he was accepting that he and God are one. But it required him studying for a long time. The lost years of Jesus are basically him in studying with ancient well, they were the ancient teachings, many of them found in Egypt, a lot of them found in the Far East, where he was learning what Buddha taught. You got to understand your mind. You've got to realize that your thoughts create your reality. So, and that the individual self is the source of all problems. There are no problems if you don't have an individual self, meaning one who thinks they're here and human separate from God over here. So that's why Buddha has a saying, no self, no problem. So if you don't think you are your individualized conditioned self, you will not have any problems. But for that to be given up, this has to be accepted and brought in together to work in harmony, to work in unity. That's the first step for unity. All of us humans getting together and talking about all kinds of things that are true or not true, that is a level of unity, but the real unity is when the creative source is brought in to be one with each and every one of us. That's why awakening is not something that anybody can do for you. You have to do it yourself. You have to integrate the true source of who you are with your human self. And the human self is going to have a temporary experience. Your eternal self is eternal. So when these two combine, you now have access to the all-knowing that allows you to realize who you really are, that allows you to access the knowingness of the eternal now, so that we stop operating as individual lifetimes and this is who we are right now and that's it. We need to have access to the whole of who we are. That only happens when you integrate the one, the keeper of all the knowledge. And then we enter into places. There's lots of different names, Akashic records, halls of Amenti. There's different names. It doesn't matter. When you open up your mind to receive knowledge, you begin to get, a lot of people call them downloads because it feels like it's coming out of nowhere. Well, it's coming into you because you have accepted that merging. And we begin to receive downloads even if we're not fully, completely in a state of total merger. Because here's the funny thing. This is what is so difficult for all of us to understand. God is only coming down into a relationship with us. We are ascending to connect with God because the mind has been conditioned in separation. We're separate. But in truth, you are born with God within you. As a child, God is what animates that child. There's no separation about that. One who is not trained into thinking God is out there. Um, Take a quick drink of water. One who is not trained into thinking God is out there already knows that power exists within them. So it requires a lot of training to say God's out there. So what Jesus did was move through a lot of his Jewish training that put God, as the boss, and the Pharisees and the Roman emperors and the rabbis, as they knew some more than he did. So he had to work through some of that. But his recognition when he started studying in the Far East was that God was already within. The power is within. Who's the one who helps you do this work? It's you. It's all in here. You're constantly removing layers that block you from the awareness of the truth that is already in you because you were born with it. So we're removing layers of misinformation from within. And the only way to remove a layer is by saying, I don't want to believe that anymore. And then what do you want to believe instead? You must replace it. Otherwise, if you say, I don't want to believe that, that thought just stays around there and can creep its head in different situations. But when you replace it with what you know to be true, you little by little are removing layers. So your mind is being purified from beliefs that are not true. And because every single one of us who is animated as a human, the animation is the source of God. I mean, it's like you, sweet brother, you went to a funeral not too long ago, and you've been to others, and I've been to plenty of funerals. I'm sure everybody here has attended a funeral, and you can see that a day before that person was in that casket, They were moving, they were alive to whatever degree that they were animated. And then one day there's no animation. What happened? What is it that is no longer there? It's the spirit, it's the source. It's no longer there. It has been released to continue on its journey, to continue creating potential new lifetimes that require a body. So the body pops in and then there's another lifetime. So what we have got to get is that what animates the human self is the source of God. That is what animates us. So instead of really truly thinking that we bring God down to our level, I mean, I used to think that. So but it requires time to realize how immature our beliefs are until they become a lot more mature. And to me, the shifting into the maturity is the recognition God is in me. God cannot be anywhere else other than in me. The whole world is a projection from within me. And to be able to move into that space of you're accepting God is within you, you're accepting your position as a co-creator with God. Now, from that place, we project the world that we see. So then everything that we see has to have God in it because God is in everything. God is in me. God is in everything. And part of the game that we are waking up to and recognizing is that everything that we experience is coming from within our mind. So, Course in Miracles is training us to understand not only are we in the mind of God, because God is in me. So, this body is in the mind of God. And then this body that appears to be separate and then goes on to have a human experience begins to project all of these ideas. But what animates me is always going to be spirit. There cannot not be anything that animates me if it's not spirit. Again, go look at a dead body. They're there, the body is there, but there's no animation. What is that animation? The life force, that which allows the human to express itself, to be all the things that it's being. Why would this happen? Because this is how God experiences everything. God is non-physical energy that animates anything and everything that can be animated. The leaves, the rocks, the water, the beings on this planet, other planets, it doesn't matter where they are. Anything that experiences animation, that experiences its separation, if you will, like a rock, like a grain of sand, is all created by source. It's all made of God. It cannot not be. If God is infinite, if God is omnipotent, if God is omniscient, all of those words means that God is everywhere. There's no end to God being infinite, meaning if God was over here and there's a alien over there, and you say, well, God is didn't create that alien, then God wouldn't be infinite because God wouldn't be all of it so that could be within it. So there are so many things that can be unpacked when we move down this journey to really understand the true nature of God. Jesus did that. He got it. He was able to recognize that God is not outside of me like I've been taught. And he knew because I've read a lot of books that he has channeled. He knew that he was not going to be operating for very long thinking God was outside of him, that he needed to get to the place that he cultivated a relationship with God within. So he goes to the River Jordan. He has his big experience with while John the Baptist is baptizing him. And all of a sudden he comes up. It's a beautiful metaphor. He comes out of the water cleansed. So he totally has been cleansed. So all the old stories of God him over here and God over there, he's been doing the work to bring it together. What happened was a full-blown realization. I and the Father are one. I cannot not be anything at all if it's not because the Father, Mother God is in me, is the energy that powers me. When we accept that intellectually, it's one thing. But what Jesus did is at the heart level, he felt He felt the presence, the energy, the intelligence, the eternalness of the creator within him. From that moment forward, he knows he's not a body. That's what the Course in Miracles is teaching us. He knew he was not a body, but he had a body. And the body that he had was here to complete its role. And its role at that time was to go about in the midst of the area that he lived in to teach the truth. And guess what? Just it's amazing when you study what Jesus was up against. He was up against corrupt governments. He was up against a system that told people that God was outside of them, so a religious system, a government from Rome that made the emperor. They're the ones who know everything. The rabbis are the ones who disseminate all of the truth, and all of the truth that the rabbis disseminated were based on all of these hundreds of laws. I can't remember how many, five, six, seven, 800 laws about how you're supposed to live your life. Well, do you think the source of all that is needs a bunch of laws to live life through you? Not at all. But the source of all that is needs to not be blocked by all of the laws that we've made up, all of the systems, everything external. We went through a whole section, I think it was in paragraph 30, where it talked about idols. From the moment that we're little, we are conditioned to idolize others outside of us. If the medical establishment, if the political establishment, the education establishment, the government, all of that, religion, all of that becomes idolized. Oh, you know better than me. And every one of them tells us God is outside, your healing is outside, your knowledge is outside. Well, that creates a total, complete fracture in your mind. You then cast aside everything that has power over you. And then you're left over here, this body that can't do anything without everything outside of you telling you what to do, which is why humanity has little by little been descending into a very small idea of who we are. We're a shell of what we can possibly experience because our mind is twisted and programmed and conditioned. And there's so many different ways that it is said. Don Miguel Ruiz calls it domesticated. Some people call it indoctrinated. It doesn't matter what word you use. The all that you bring with you because God comes as the essence of you, all of that begins to be forgotten when your mind, and this is where the ego kicks in. The ego mind is the idea of who I am, this self that I am, small self, because everything else is bigger than me. This small self then begins to think that I am less than, that I am not as worthy, that I'm not as capable, and then all power is out here. And I've got to become one of these powerful people to have power. Actually, they put God up here, then they put themselves kind of in the middle. And you can't get to God if you don't get through the middle. So Jesus basically said, that's not true. I felt God within me. From that total, complete knowing of God within, recognizing I and my Father are one. I cannot not speak the truth of who I am, not just to recognize it for myself, but to share it with everybody else. So he went out for 3 years, and I'm surprised that it took that long, but he went out for 3 years, and inconveniently for all the other idols that had been worshipped, the rabbis and the Pharisees and the emperors, everybody ahead of him, he was basically saying what they're telling you is really not the truth. The truth is that God is within you. If you knew who God was in you, you'd only need two rules. And it's really one, but he broke it down into to make it more simple. You love God. If you love God, you know God's in you. There's no way to love God and not know, not feel God within you when it's a real experience. When you say it coming from the head, you can say, "Oh yeah, I love God," but you're still over here operating in fear. That's not the love of God. You have to feel the love of God, which removes all fear because it's pure love. It's pure creation. It's pure truth and knowingness. It's an access to all that God knows when you can begin to feel God, but you got to get from your head to your heart. Jesus spent, the bulk of his earlier years doing the work to remove those beliefs, to question those beliefs, to do all of the things that he did to come to the moment that in the River Jordan he felt God, and then it was sealed. It was a done deal. So when we are taught that we are not, that we are down here and God is there, well, that makes it very difficult for us to really love God. And then we're taught God's going to punish you, and it's got 800 laws between you and God. Well, that makes it pretty uncomfortable, pretty inconvenient to love God when, well, God's up there on a cloud. It doesn't need to work. It doesn't need to feed the family. It doesn't need to clean the house. It doesn't need to pay the taxes. I'm down here and doing all that. Yeah, I love you, God, and you love me, sure. But there's not a real relationship. So Jesus said, you got to love God. And then he went about to teach people how to love God. He went about teaching God is within you, attempting to get people to understand that the love of God is a non-judgmental love. It's a love that accepts everything. That's why, with all their rules and regulations, and they were going to go ahead and stone to death the prostitute or the thieves or whatever it was that were going to get in trouble. He was saying, who among you can cast the first stone? I mean, who among you has no sin, has not done anything wrong? And of course, none of them could say that they couldn't lie and say, "Oh no, I haven't done anything wrong." Everybody in the village knew them, so we all make mistakes. Course in Miracles calls that, that's what the sin is we made a mistake, we missed the mark, we haven't lived to our full loving potential, because what happened is that Jesus wanted people to feel the love of God. Because when you can begin to feel love for another without any conditions, when the head doesn't get engaged and all that you feel is that feeling, then you are closer to feeling the love of God. And that ability to feel the love of God is what does away with fear. If you have the love of God, you are not going to be afraid. If you have the love of God in you, you cannot judge. You cannot be in lack. You cannot be in worry. You cannot be in hoarding. You cannot be in revenge. You cannot do any of those things that are part of the lower frequencies if you're operating at the love of God that is a total, complete, absolute knowing that you are the creator of everything, that you have the creative source within you. Now, I want to be really clear. One of the challenges in becoming spiritual or becoming religious is too many people think that, oh, okay, I am God, then I am God and I'm the God. And it's not that. It's that you are made, everything about you is made of God. It's made of God, but you're not the only God. Everybody is God. Everybody is an expression of God. Everything is an expression of God. So you have to humble yourself. For a while, the ego gets all, oh, yeah, I am God. I love God and I know God and I'm one with God and that's it. Well, out of that come more religions and more, people who want to rule other people because they rule with misinformation. When you know the truth of who you are, nobody can rule you because you know you're one with God. You do not fall into anything that sucks you into anyone out there having the truth that you follow and idolize. Those things do not happen. So Jesus, back to what Jesus taught, love your God. Love God, period. That's it. Love God. So you got to begin to feel that love of God. And that's where you begin to not judge others. And while he's at the same time not judging others, who's judging him? Everybody who was in charge, everybody who was saying, what he wants to teach on the Sabbath, he wants to do things that are against our rules, our laws, our regulations. Well, the people who got offended that Jesus was teaching people, if you love God, you don't need to be listening to all these other rulers. You don't need all these idols. But the people at the time, the majority, did not have the training of the mind that was necessary to not be in fear of what the rulers at that time would do to them. So Jesus went on to say the second part of that is love your neighbor as yourself. And what's so important about that, you can't love your neighbor until you begin to love yourself. And you love yourself because you feel the love of God in you. So the love of God, you feel it and you extend that to the prostitute, let's say at that time of Jesus, and you totally forgive her. And you can't see her as a sinner. You can't see her as somebody who did anything wrong or bad. You see her with the love of God. That love that you're extending is the love within you. Yes, it's God within you, but you're the one who's extending it. So as you send that love out to that prostitute, it looks like kindness, compassion, lack of judgment, lack of fear. In that moment, you're focused on what you're doing. You're not worried about, the Pharisees are going to come and lock you up. You're just loving. As you love them, it's because you have learned to love yourself. Excuse me. You have made the decision that the love of God moving through you, which is self-love, is more important than what anybody else thinks about you. That's how you can love your neighbor. That's how that prostitute or whoever it is, the thief, that's how you can love them because it's coming from you. So you learn to love God. You know God is what animates you. You recognize your oneness. From that place of oneness, you then commit to love yourself enough to only extend love. Anybody who is judging in that moment, they're not loving themselves. In that moment, they built a block to the awareness of the presence of love. So love cannot extend because love has been suppressed. And we see this all over the place. So Jesus at that time is going around teaching everybody God is in you. You and the Father are one. The kingdom of heaven is within. These are the simple rules that you need to follow. Basically, love each other. Stop judging each other. And if you all stop judging each other, then the Pharisees are going to have a hard time because they want to control and they want to, tax you and do all of these things. But eventually, if enough of you stand up, well, they're not going to be able to make you do things that are not natural to you. Sure, they're normal because they've been indoctrinated, but they're not natural. They don't come from within like a little child. A little child doesn't hate on anybody. And you can say, well, the first year or two, they don't know how to talk. Well, yes, you're right. They don't know how to talk, so their mind hasn't been so indoctrinated, but they love everybody. Nobody's afraid to hold a baby because nobody's scared of a baby. Why are they not scared? Because they're just a little bundle of love. They just extend compassion and kindness. They're there not to hurt anybody. They're there just to be. Well, we got to get back to the place to be like little children and be what we were created to be. To be able to do that, we have to do the work of training our mind. We have had thousands of years since Jesus was here, lots of other people since he's been here, teaching us the same thing. Gandhi comes to mind as an example of one who chose to be loving and not fight against the British. And he basically got the British to give India power over themselves. If you think about it, why does any country have power over another? Why does any government have power over its citizens? Why does a teacher have power over the student? And when I'm talking about power, it's power that comes with fear. Why? Because we have been indoctrinated into believing God is outside of us. We're over here. We're just a little human. And well, we can't go up against the system. Well, Jesus was saying, know that God is in you and you can go up against the system because the system has no power over you. And he showed that because he was willing to lay down his life because he's not his body. And I say he laid down his life. He laid down his body. His life is eternal. When you feel the presence of God within you and you know that what animates you is pure life, you're not afraid to lose your body. Body is a temporary experience. You're going to get one. You're going to get thousands, maybe millions of them. So if you know the truth of who you are, you have no fear. You have zero fear. So what is happening right now, it's the same thing that happened 2,000 years ago. It's been happening for a very long time. You can go to Egypt and find the same thing 5,000 years ago. And now with everything that is being discovered with the pyramids, we're going to start seeing that we've been around here a very long time. One of the channels that I like to listen to, Cryon, says it's been 200,000 years. We've had lots of civilizations where we ebb and flow, where we know the truth of who we are, and then we forget the truth of who we are. Right now, humanity is waking up to remember the truth of who we are. to move out of the density of having power outside of us, we must go through the work of training our mind to begin to recognize we're not letting God in. We're accepting that God's always been in there, and we're recognizing all of the blocks that we have built against knowing the truth of what God is. So we got to, in our own mind, begin to say, oh, grandma taught me this, the church taught me this belief came from dad, this belief came from the school, this belief came from my best friend's parents. And we're basically internally wiping down, erasing all of those beliefs that don't serve because we're discovering the truth, which is its opposite. I don't need anything outside of me. All the power of God is within me. And it takes time to be one who is expressed from the inside out. And for a while we do that. And sometimes it can be, we can be arrogant or whatever. I've been there, done that, until we move to the place that we begin to become really humble. And the arrogance of the ego, oh yeah, I am God, eventually gives way to the humbleness of recognizing what? All of the creative source of all that is, it's in me. When the mind is not filled with how can I make me special because I got God in me, and it moves to how can I express the magnificence of this power that is within me. Sometimes it's hard to speak when you move into that place of realizing the creative source that has created everything is what animates each and every one of us. To humble ourselves enough to go, wow, if I can tap in to this source that is already within me, what follows? Well-being, happiness, abundance, joy, all of the things that we're looking for on the outside, trying to get, but we can't get it from the outside because it's temporary on the outside. Nobody can give you that which is permanent within. So we have to go through what we have to go through to get to that place within where we really come to understand the incredible power that exists within us, the incredible love, the incredible intelligence, because you begin to tap into things you had no idea you could tap into. I used to think I knew it all until I began to replace my egoic ideas about myself, and I began to realize, wait a second, I have access to the one that really knows everything. I don't need to know anything. I need to just know the bare minimum, and the need to be right disappeared when I knew, well, I have access to all knowing. So I'll get to know what I need to know whenever it is that I need to know it. And that is part also of a big challenge, is that our education system teaches people to believe that they're getting knowledge from the outside, and not that all that knowledge that's coming in is just blocking their real knowingness inside. So we get all arrogant and we have a high school degree, and then more arrogant if we have a college degree, and more arrogant if you have a master's, even more arrogant if you're a PhD, because then you think, oh my gosh, I know so much about so little. Because the more you move into a PhD, the less you know about a lot of things, and the more you know about one insignificant thing. So the mind has to be trained to stop thinking that we know everything and humble ourselves to really connect with the source of all knowing. And again, those things are difficult to do. It's a challenge because you got to come inside. You got to begin to see that you are the carrier of the source of all that is. You have a very important role. And that is something that society has done a really good job of making us all feel insignificant, small. You're just this one person on the team. You're just this one person out of 1,000 in the school. You're just one out of 50,000 in your community. You're just one out of 200 million in your country. So we're just made to be one of so little, a small one in a big group. So this is a journey where you got to go on your own and begin to train your mind. Course in Miracles, you will never be able to find a church that is founded on Course in Miracles and there's one person who's the authority of the Course in Miracles there. Not going to happen. And the reason it cannot happen is because it states in the very beginning, this is a course in mind training. It's an individual course. It's between you and your own mind. That's it. That is it. Now, people can come together I've had plenty of groups to study it, and one that maybe knows a little bit more can share with others what they've discovered until somebody else knows a little bit more, and then that one can share what they've discovered. But all of it is based on you understanding your mind. Because when you understand your mind, then you can unlock all of the blocks you have built to your heart. Now you can love without any issues everybody, because your heart is not blocked by beliefs that tell you, well, you can't love that one, you can't love that one. No, that one didn't take the shot. You can't love it. You can't love that one because they voted for somebody else. You can't love that one because they didn't graduate, or you can't love that one because of their color or their gender. All of that nonsense about selective love goes away. If you're going to be selective, you're going to select everybody, period. You're not going to be picking out these few that I'm going to love, because if you do that, that means you don't know who you are and you don't know what's going on. But once you begin to love everybody, then you are coming closer to the truth of who you are, because you're coming closer to loving God. And once you love God, you cannot help but love your neighbor as yourself, because you enjoy the love that is flowing through you. Once you realize how uncomfortable it is to have a thought in your mind that says, nope, not going to love that one. Once you're aware, what? I just selected that one not to love them. Wait a second, why is that happening? And you can see, you can trace those beliefs. Oh, yeah, my grandmother taught me not to, love this gender or that color or that religion. And you go, okay, thank you, Grandma, for teaching me that. Now I follow the truth, which is I love everybody. 2,000 years ago, Jesus went against the establishment. Today, we're going against the establishment. The establishment is anybody that you have idolized and you said that they have power over you. And when they have power over you and you're afraid that if you don't do what they tell you to do, you're going to be in trouble, then you're not trusting the source of all that is within you. And we have to be honest. One of the characteristics of a teacher of God, you got honesty is key. Honesty in that is described as consistency. Are you consistently not afraid of anything? If you're consistently not afraid of anything, you're living your life, you're in the world, but you're not of it. But everything that scares you is an opportunity for us to see what beliefs do we have that block us from knowing the truth of what's going on here. And in many cases, it still has God out here, and you're trying to, bring God down and do the visuals of the light coming in you. At some point, you realize there's nothing coming into you. You are the one who lets everything out of you. Everything comes from you. God is, period. And every one of us that wakes up and says God is, whether it's 1,000 or 1,000,000 or 1,000,000,000, what we're doing is we're bringing light to the world. We're extending that light because we're no longer looking to the outside to define us. We are bringing the light to the world. That's why the Course tells us we are the light of the world, and the salvation of our brothers depends on us, because once we know the truth of who we are, we're no longer judging others. We're no longer putting them down. It's not necessary, because you have the source within you. And once you have that source within you, I can tell you, you don't want to give it up. It feels so freaking good. It feels delicious to be joyful. It feels delicious to accept everybody. I got to work hard to go, oh my God, I can't stand that person, and make up a story. I can't stand them because they wore this color, or they did that, or, they didn't loan me $20, or they were mean, or they come from this family, or they're believe in this, or they posted that on social media. I got to come up with so many different reasons to not like anybody. Just a minute into that, it's like, ugh, that's disgusting. Let me wash myself. Let me dip myself into the river Jordan and come out cleansed. That baptism is just a metaphor, to show you got to cleanse yourself of that nonsense, but it takes time to do that. So last week, when we were looking in chapter 3 in A Course in Miracles, and we are inside of section number 6, judgment and the authority problem, we realize that, we judge reality only because we don't know who we really are. And judgment always involves rejection. So to judge somebody is to reject. And here's the thing, is not just to reject them, is to reject your own ability to feel the presence of God. And that was in paragraph 2. We looked at paragraph 3. where basically the need to judge another wrong and or another right, it doesn't matter. Any judgment is a block for our ability to experience the truth of who we are. And then we move through paragraph number 3, and we basically realize that when you know you don't know who you are and you're uncertain about if you should judge this person or not, all uncertainty comes from the belief that you're under the coercion of judgment. If you're uncertain about whether you should like that person, if you're uncertain about whether you're going to give them a pass because they voted for somebody else, if you're uncertain if they deserve to be accepted, then you're under the coercion of judgment. You're under the coercion of the ego. Then paragraph number 4 that we looked at last week was it states in the first sentence, paragraph 4, you are very fearful of everything you have perceived but have refused to accept. So we're very fearful people because we understand that some things are we understand the government's corrupt. We understand that big pharma has been lying to people. We understand that the education department doesn't always have the best interest of our students at hand. We now have enough knowledge to understand that there's something fishy going on, that there's some corruption going on, that there's money that has been, embezzled or siphoned. I was listening to a lady earlier today. She used to work in the government and now she's gone on to, I can't remember, Catherine something rather. And she has been listing the ways that the government has created incredible fraud. I think she said $21 trillion. And where does that money come from? You and I working our butts off to pay taxes. Well, this is the thing, is that if you know things smell fishy and you still don't do something about it, then that's what this says. You're very fearful. You're very fearful of everything you have perceived, but have refused to accept. If we don't accept, there's something off. If I am made in the image of God, if I am this amazing, made like God said, in its image, why aren't us humans and every living being, of course, why aren't humans who have the intelligence, who have self-awareness? A cow doesn't know that it's a cow. It just is a cow. We have the ability to know that I'm not a cow, I'm a human. That self-awareness is key to begin to question, who am I really? That's why when we go through these existential experiences, you ask, who am I? Why am I here? What's my purpose? Because we have to snap out of the roles that we're playing that are too small for who we truly are. And when we snap out of that, then we come to accept I and the Father are one. Then the enlightenment kicks in because you know that you are the light of the world. You, not in your head, but you feel it and you extend it to everybody. So in paragraph number 5, it tells us, um, well, let me read from paragraph 4, sentence 4. Nothing that you have refused to accept can be brought into awareness. So every single time we're denying, I'm going to deny God is in me. I'm going to deny that I'm that powerful. I'm going to deny that I'm creative. I'm going to deny all of these things. Well, when you deny them, they can't come into your awareness. The journey of becoming self-aware is to begin to realize, really, how much more is there to you? How much more is there to you? Little babies who grow up in an environment that they're allowed to just be themselves don't go around walking around going, well, I came in and I'm so small and I am just, I'm probably not going to be much of anything. I'm going to grow up and just be a taxpayer and have a small life. They don't do that. They come in with grandiose ideas, and little by little, we teach them to forget about those grandiose ideas and focus in on the one career that they can become a PhD at and become an expert at. So that everything else that they knew, well, they can't access it because their mind is so filled with all this stuff about this one thing that they're going to be an expert at. And really, what the world needs now is more people who are not educated by the outside, who let God move from them, from the inside, to show us how to do things. That's why we have so many young people coming in since the harmonic convergence of 1987 to help us remember the truth of who we are. So, paragraph number 5. And this, I so related to this week when I was not feeling well. So when you feel tired, it is because you have judged yourself as capable of being tired. I was judging myself. Oh my gosh, I'm sick. Oh, I'm capable of being sick. Clearly, that's my human self talking, my ego. That's not God talking. God doesn't get sick. God is the source of well being. So I had those moments where I was listening to the voice of the ego. When you laugh at someone, it is because you have judged him as unworthy. God knows I've done lots of times when I'm sarcastic. I'm better than you. I know more than you because I was judging them unworthy. I'm better than you are. When you laugh at yourself, you must laugh at others, if only because you cannot tolerate the idea of being more unworthy than they are. So you feel bad about you, then you got to go find somebody else to throw that on. All this makes you feel tired because it is essentially disheartening. It hurts our heart, the heart of God within. It's disheartening. Our human self, not our godly self. It hurts us when we know the truth of who we are and we're entertaining the idea that we're tired. We're entertaining the idea that we're sick. We're entertaining the idea that I'm better than somebody else or somebody's better than me. It feels like a contraction because it is. You got to contract and think less of yourself or others. That does not allow for the energy of love to move through you, for the healing to be done, as Jesus said, to Lazarus, get up and walk. Those things do not, Lazarus, a dead one, those things are not possible for us to experience if we become disheartened, we become small. Oh, I'm so sick. I'm so, in debt. I'm so blah, blah, blah. And of course, a judgment of others. Sentence 5, you are not really capable of being tired. Listen to what Jesus is telling us here. But you are very capable of wearying yourself. So, what makes us tired? I watch my little grandbabies. Tired is practically not in their vocabulary. And even though their bodies are getting tired because they're playing a human role and they're in one lifetime, so they've got one body and the body, can only handle so much. So what happens is that we get tired because we're weighed down by all of the beliefs that we hold that are not true. They're sucking energy to maintain their ability to be active. They're sucking energy. They're draining us. That judgment against somebody else, we think we get a righteous high, short-lived, because then there's the guilt, the low of the guilt and the shame, and we may not admit it to anybody else, but inside we know something is off. So, sentence 6, the strain of constant judgment is virtually intolerable. It is curious that an ability so debilitating would be so deeply cherished. If we could really pay attention to how our judgments and our lies to ourselves and others and our resentments and our need for revenge, they take up so much energy. It takes a lot of energy to maintain those things going that are not true. Sentence 8, yet if you wish to be the author of reality, you will insist on holding on to judgment. Well, I am the creator of my reality. One of the first things that most people latch onto about spirituality is I'm the creator of my reality. And if you're an idiot, then I know you're an idiot because I create my reality and I am acknowledging your idiotness. That's okay. You can definitely do that. But every single time that you are putting power outside of you, whether you are aware of it or not, it doesn't matter. Remember, this tells us that the fact that we don't understand what's going on doesn't stop us from experiencing the effects of it because we're contributing to it, albeit unaware. We're contributing to it, albeit without awareness of what we're doing. And why do we not know what we're doing? Because we've been conditioned to believe that we're not powerful, that those things just go hand in hand. So, sentence 9, you will also regard judgment with fear, believing that it will someday be used against you. This belief can exist only to the extent that you believe in the efficacy of judgment as a weapon of defense for your own authority. Whew. Go watch the political shenanigans right now. Watch all of the people who are out there pointing the finger, busily letting you know how bad this one is, how bad that one is. I mean, if you watch the news right now, it's To me, it's pretty funny that these powerful, amazing, loving, creative beings, all that they're doing is, okay, this person did this to me, so I'm going to do this to him. This one took, is slashing these jobs, and we're going to go and burn their cars and slash their jobs. The immaturity that we're observing on the world stage, and we call these people politicians, and we call these people leaders, is first of all, for me, is very funny. From where I sit now, I just go, wow, that soul is using some serious creative power to create that insanity, to create that much pain and suffering, to create that much, attention to themselves. And because when you understand that everybody is a soul taking on a human body, excuse me, animating a human body, oops, and not owning the truth of who they are, they're still being powered by God. Let me take a drink now. I'm going to get the hiccups. They're still being powered by God because God is in everything that we see. God is everywhere. So as I watch the shenanigans, all I can see is exactly what we need to learn to do. You can see the ones who are doing something loving for the greater good, and you can see those who are calling for love because they just want things done for themselves. There's either extension from self to others, or there's contraction from others to self. So those who are selfish, those who are all about me, their interest is only in what can I get out of this? And to get something, they always have to put somebody down. Those who are here in service for the greater good, they're doing things and they don't need to get credit. It's not important. It's not necessary. They don't even have to get paid. So when you can begin to look at what is happening out there from that lens, is it love extending itself for the greater good, or is it selfishness? What can I get for myself? That's the ego. That's a call for love. And it's a call for love because they don't realize that they got love inside of them to extend. They are instead bashing to try and get superior, which is what judgment is all about. I'm going to put that one down. That makes me, if I put them down, think of a seesaw. If I put them down and say enough bad things about them, then on the seesaw, that takes me up. It's very simple. The process is very simple. When we're used to putting others down, we get a high, but it's always a short-lived high. Granted, if you surround yourself with all kinds of people and they're all doing the same thing, then the high seems to stay a little longer until the bubble bursts. But for the most part, anybody who puts a brother or sister down doesn't realize, number one, God is in them. So there's no love relationship with God. They don't realize that they are judging their brothers and sisters because they don't love themselves. They cannot love themselves. Somebody who loves himself and is at peace doesn't go around stirring shit with other people because you're not going to give up your peace. You come to realize that you rather have peace instead of anything else. You come to realize that you are here to deliver something to the world, and it's only one thing, and that is love. And if you cannot recognize that that's your primary job, then you're going to be one who's constantly calling for love by doing, stupid, immature things. And the whole world is filled, well, I'm not going to say the whole world, about half the world is filled with stupid immaturity right now. And the other half is doing the best that they can to claw themselves out of the density of believing that they are somebody who they're not, and owning their power, owning their magnificence, realizing that they deserve to express themselves exactly as God created them. And whatever level of the journey we're on, and you could even look at this whole journey in this lifetime like my little slinky, wherever you are in the journey, you're just going to keep going up the spiral. You're going to keep going up the spiral. And eventually, maybe in this lifetime, we understand the whole game. Wow, it's a pretty fascinating game, filled with so many people playing so many different roles so that we could have an experience of being a human on planet Earth. Every role that is being played is God expressing themselves at various levels of our awareness. Listen to what I'm saying. Everyone expressing themselves on this planet is God. God expressing itself to the level of our awareness. If our awareness is down here, I'm small and little and I'm afraid and I should be ashamed of who I am because I don't contribute anything. From that level all the way up to the level that accepts the truth of who we are, it's a lot of steps. Think of it as a massive spiral staircase. Every step that you're taking is a step to cultivate trust, is a step to become more honest, is a step to let go of untruths. But to let go of untruths, you've got to discover what's not true. To become more honest, you got to discover where honesty existed. So it's a journey of being curious enough to question everything you believe. And you will know that you have come upon the truth when what you believe feels absolutely peaceful, feels absolutely loving. That's when you are at the truth. Anything else, fears, worries, concerns, blah, 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 that you're not at the truth. But you may be closer to the truth because you've experienced moments of that peace and that certainty and that clarity. So you have these moments of not feeling so good, then you know where you're going. So we're constantly swapping from the egoic aspect of us telling us this is true to moving back and allowing ourselves to align with our true nature and realizing, oh, that's not true. It's like me. I was experiencing being sick, and I had to sit there and go, okay, God, you're the source of well-being. What is it that I need to learn from not feeling well? Something hasn't happened to me in a very long time. What is it that I need to know? And what came to me was, it's time for you to rest and receive. And I practically didn't read anything, didn't watch anything. I just simply sat and received. And what I was receiving was like a bath of love. I was receiving how much I'm loved, how much I matter, and how much my awareness of the truth and owning it is important. It serves, it shines a light from within me for anybody who's ready to see that. And the thing about this is that it's not just my truth, it's everybody's truth. So I came out of that experience going, oh my gosh, I have so much more to do. I can do so much more to help make these teachings more available, more accessible, and to just be more of an example of the truth that I know I have found. I wouldn't trade my peace for anything else. And I cannot convince anybody of the peace that I feel inside. But if I can be an example of it and it touches one person or 10 people or 2,000, it's okay. But at the end of the day, everything that I am doing is because I have come to love God, and I will not do anything but love my neighbor, because to feel the love of God, I have to love myself. It has to flow through me. And while I'm experiencing that love moving through me, there are no thoughts in the head that can block it. So what Jesus taught us was so profound, but it's so profound because he lived it. He was an example, and every one of us is called to be an example to our brothers and sisters, because by being an example, we get to extend the truth of God into this world. And this world's not missing anything but more of the truth of God. So with that, I am complete. Ooh, that one went a little bit. If anybody has anything to say, please share. Otherwise, we will meet next week again at this same time, 12 o'clock Eastern time. Uh, Seems like that works. So this is episode 191. The rest of them are on my YouTube channel. All right, everybody. Love you all. Thank you for being here then. Big kisses to everybody. Bye bye.